Welcome back, everybody, to the PEO Speedwagon podcast. Joined here with Ryan Shapiro, fresh out of West Palm Beach. Ryan, you look like you're doing a little weather reporting over there or something. Talk to us. What's going on in West Palm Beach?
It's a little actually overcast today, and a little windy. You can see kind of some of the palm trees move if I get out of the way, but it's great. Yesterday was 74 and sunny, and couldn't ask for anything more at this time of the year than the frigid temperatures we've been encountering in other parts of the country. So it's going well, and it's kind of it's a fun. I'm wearing my Miami Vice get up, right, with the V-neck and the sport coat to kind of
matches the PEO Speedwagon theme. We need an actual Speedwagon, like the what was the car from Miami Vice that they had? What was that notorious white?
I don't know. No, we can cut this part out. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll plug it in. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's great down here, and busy day, meeting with some partners, meeting with a couple South Florida based clients, or prospective clients, I should say. And so yeah, it's a great time of the year to be down here.
Nice. Well, I'm jealous. I'm coming on the next trip. But luckily we're still able to connect over our podcast here. And for this episode, folks, I think what we're going to dive into today is, Brian and I talked a little bit about this before, with just the world of onboarding in the PEO industry, kind of the ideas around it, the PEOMG approach to it, and kind of our effects on it, and how different PEOs, do it and approach it. And so I think just to set the stage for this conversation, Ryan, with your experience of doing quite a few onboardings in your time, maybe explain what an onboarding is and kind of what the stages are of it, just to lay out a foundation for what we'll be talking about.
Yeah, for anybody who's considering a PEO, the terminology of onboarding comes up, and there are a vast array of definitions around what that looks like. And that's because PEOs all kind of approach it a little bit differently. But what it is intended to be is, one, just very tactically, it's the transition on to the technology, the infrastructure, the benefit plan, sometimes the 401k of the PEO that you have selected for your small to medium-sized business. So it's transitioning your existing payroll from whomever you're with to the PEO's payroll, getting that entire environment set up, getting all the small things from employee deductions and pay codes and classes and time and attendance all configured, to actually onboarding the employees, much like they were being hired by the PEO, where they're signing up for their employee benefit program, selecting the healthcare package, selecting the different ancillary benefits that are available to them, whether they're employee sponsored or employer sponsored, as well as uploading their banking information so they can get paid by the PEO. And then it is the process past that event of making sure that everything is configured correctly and ties into your pay periods and your work comp codes and everything else, just getting it all set up. Tactically, that's what it is. What it's supposed to be is really, one, a PR event, because I've always believed that when someone buys a PEO, they do this because it's a more effective way to manage the human capital in your business. But it's also because you care about your employees. You wouldn't do this if your employees weren't your most important asset. You wouldn't do this if you didn't value them at a level that you needed to have the best for them in terms of HR support, HR infrastructure, benefit packages to attract them into the business, to retain your key employees. And so it's really should be a big PR event where employees can tangibly see the impact of the PEO and what's coming through this really important decision that the employer made on their behalf.
Okay.
Two, it also becomes an event where you can deploy change that you're looking for in the business. So whether that's cost controls, whether that's fixing some legacy systems that no longer make sense for your business around payroll or how you onboard employees, or different things that you've established. And so a PEO and the onboarding process can be an agent of change for some of those types of situations.
Yeah, I remember one coming to mind, and it's like a realignment of PTO policies, and then using that as an opportunity to say, "Hey, this is the approach we're taking," and it's kind of packaged into the onboarding.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Would you what would you say are maybe like a common misconception or something that you see business owners coming into onboardings and having, or maybe ways they think it's going to go versus how it does go, good or bad to their expectation?
Um, yeah, there's oftentimes there's misalignment, but that's created by the PEOs.
Mm-hmm.
As we have the opportunity to work with a lot of different PEOs and all really great ones, there's this way that the PEO communicates around the onboarding process, that it's white glove, that we'll take care of everything, that it's seamless. And it's just simple. It's one day you're doing payroll in X payroll system, and now you're doing it in our PEOs. So I believe that that's not true. There is a lot more that goes into it than that. And it's the second most painful part of this process, or the second painful encountering you have in a PEO transition. One, it's collecting the data and going through like all the myriads of different evaluation steps in it. And then two, it's the onboarding.
Yeah.
It takes more time. Not that it's not worth it, but it takes more time, and there are certainly frustration points in it, and it never goes as smoothly as perhaps a PEO sales rep will tell you it's going to go. And that's oftentimes where the first disconnect can occur.
Okay. So you mentioned that, the PEO sets the expectation for it, of course, and then there's the reality of the event itself. Talk to me a little bit about the differences between PEOs' approaches to onboarding. Are there drastic differences, or are they all kind of grouped together and have some similarities?
There are some drastic differences, and that's evolved over time. Some of the more what I would refer to as HR sleek tech PEOs, where most, if not all, of the relationship runs through the HRIS system, and all the HR support mechanisms, even people-driven one, kind of attach off of that HR tech. They're much more transactional in this regard. It's more about get you in, get you trained, show you where all the things are, get your, routing number and an account number uploaded, and pick your benefits, and we're on our way.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, some of the more the PEOs that I would describe have much more hands-on service team models, and a lot more focus on transformational HR. They are a little more elevated processes, not necessarily better. They can be cumbersome in a lot of ways, but they are a little more hands-on, and they kind of guide the client through this much more so. But at times it's more than a customer needs. So it's not always right sized to the particular client. Mm-hmm. And it can be very positive for some, but it can be more than what some others need. And so the HR technology driven one and then the HR service team driven one are very different. And then kind of everybody sets in some version of that in the middle.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you wouldn't say this onboarding aligns with this client, and that would be the whole reason why the PEO and this small business should work together, right? But I'm sure there are moments when you factor in like how they do their onboarding and the type of business it is. Do you notice any patterns of like types of businesses that you should maybe be looking more for the like a hands-on onboarding or needs that more versus a type that could do this? I almost think of like a TurboTax, right? Where you're able to like just go through and do like questions and go through a workflow to finish everything online. Or are there businesses that fit more into that? And do you notice what types of businesses those are in like size or industry or anything?
It would, I think who needs what is all over the board. Some, less techie organizations will call it, are very comfortable with outsourcing and allowing, somebody else, a skilled service provider, to take care of things and direct traffic and get it done and just tell them when to show up, right? Or this is not their first rodeo. And so they know that these things don't go smooth. And so they're mentally prepared for that, and they can kind of anticipate that and have calibrated their expectations around that. Where maybe some of the more techie ones are very heavy people centric, and they do not want their people distracted, and they do not want any loss in productivity, and any time pulled out of, whether it's coding or working with customers in an account management capacity, like taken away is is unfathomable for them. So they want this thing done. They want it done right. And they want it done consistent with, how they think about their employees. And so I don't know that it's more about the psychographic of the particular customer as to what they expect out of this and what disruption they are willing to be comfortable with on the way to getting to an ideal HR environment. And I think that's the part that helps organize what they need, is understanding not only what they expect of this process, but what going through this process will get them to. And if this is really, if we've done a great job of aligning needs and priorities of that business to the PEO and its capability to address those needs and priorities, and they can see what will happen when they get through to the other side of onboarding, then there's from there, you can kind of build an onboarding process and expectation map of what they're going to encounter. And I think then people are a lot more comfortable.
Right. When we look at things like, costs or savings, we also factor in and balance it against the uncomfortableness of change. And is it enough to overcome that uncomfortable process of change? Because, you do have to go through an onboarding regardless. One of them will happen.
That's really well said. If I can, jump in there, because we talk to PEO reps, we talk to, people in the industry all the time. And, there's this kind of quote unquote holy grail of through the financial process of comparing their current costs to the cost it would be with the respective PEO to get to a savings. And a lot of times you work really hard, work with that customer, create a savings and create a fairly well-aligned HR environment, but then the customer doesn't move forward with it. And oftentimes that can be the transitional cost, like the unknown and the time and loss of productivity that they perceive are going to come through switching PEO to PEO or non-PEO to your PEO. And they go, hey, listen, for saving $10,000-$12,000 this year for my 15-person business, it's not worth it. I'm going to lose that productivity, inside of 1 month of onboarding. So that just doesn't move the needle for me. Now, one, you would argue you haven't built enough value for what the solution can do for that business. Or two, the value just might not be there. It's just not there. It's $12,000 in savings and it's a disruption that just doesn't really get that business owner that excited. And so sometimes that's a part of the entire analysis. And I think people think about that. The onboarding is where that should be considered, and the weight of the decision comes after the decision, but it absolutely is in the midst of their consideration of going to your PEO.
I kind of want to stay on that for a second. Then do you think that, the quality of the onboarding process then is actually part of, the conversation around if they should choose a PEO or not? I mean, it seems like that's not commonly part of the things you look at and when evaluating an organization. People, they want to spreadsheet these PEOs and kind of look at all the numbers and everything. But often it's not the quality of the onboarding process, and if it's in person or something along those lines is really factored into the value. They just kind of say, hey, it's going to be an easy switch and, here's how we do it. And we've done it 1,000 times. Do you think that people need to basically focus more on the quality of it and not just saying that it's a seamless process like they kind of all do?
I think they absolutely should. If you're talking about they, meaning the PEOs themselves, they absolutely should. Because that is a lingering thought in that business owner's mind. Let's just say you've got $50,000 in savings of moving tech company XYZ over to your PEO, but that 1,000 is not a real 50,000, because that business owner may think, hey, I'm going to lose $25,000 in productivity just right out of the gate. And then if it goes poorly, then it's going to cost me even more. So I think talking about what the onboarding process is, what it should be, what it could be, is really important. And this is a part that everybody's marketing slick on onboarding generally looks the same. So if a customer is not going through a curated evaluation PEOs where they're but they're looking at 5 or 6 of them. They gain no depth to how you're going to do it by looking at your timeline that you built for them, your marketing materials that talk about the steps in the process. This is probably a great place to go bring a reference in, somebody who can speak to the onboarding process and what it was like. 2, it's an opportunity to just be really authentic about it. Probably the best way to try to put their concerns at ease is just identifying like where it's going to be bumpy and where it's not going to go well, and what remedies you have in place to immediately address it if that does in fact happen. And that's one of the things that I have seen, kind of shifting gears. I have seen PEOs in general step back from that. When I got into the industry long time ago, onboardings were these enormous events, not only for the customer, but also for the local support service team and the sales rep. I'm shocked now at some of the implementation processes we go through that the sales rep isn't even in any of the meetings post-sale. The person who built some degree of the relationship. Without our organization, they probably built all of the relationship, but with ours, they are the person that is known. And I just think that's a huge miss. It communicates not only, 1, that you're on to the next customer, but 2, there's a vacuum that's created, a negative space that is created by that rep leaving or just not having the same fire for this process like they did in the sales process. And now it's kind of gone in the onboarding process. And I think that that's a big mistake. I think that's the PEOs trying to operate more efficiently. I think it's the PEOs trying to their salespeople back out in the field to talk to new customers. But I think it's a big miss. And it's something we absolutely stand in the gap for and try and fill. Not because we're trying to make up for the PEO, but it's just what we think is right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we do have to fill in that negative space that's created by the PEO starting to step away, or at least the sales representation.
So maybe I guess to the ones that have gotten too efficient, right? And they've thrown out a little bit more than they should have, trying for the sake of efficiency and just bringing on more clients. What would you maybe say is lacking from their process that can be added in? Like, always be in person or some sort of methodology to the onboarding itself. Like, what could they add that's like just a little bit more to be back on par with those ones that still have very curated onboarding processes?
One is a common language. During that entire sales process, that PEO sales rep and that business owner or leadership team that made this decision developed a common language around how this would go. And problems are going to be solved, and what are the focuses, and for this transition, and what really matters, right? What got them to say yes? That common language kind of evaporates when that rep steps out of the onboarding process, because they kind of have to start all over again with the onboarding specialists, with the data collection team, and then some sort of question comes up around, do you have all your employees organized correctly in terms of exempt, non-exempt, FLSA? And that owner expects for that sales rep to jump in and be like, oh yeah, they're all good. We talked through that, like just put them more at peace of mind. And so now, you kind of lose that common language and understanding you had with that sales rep. I think also, you're much more, one of the greatest values a sales rep at a PEO can provide in the implementation process is just being that gentle hand to guide through that process. I use the analogy of a nav system in your car, right? When you don't know where you're going, that nav system, even if you're going a half a mile away, is the most powerful tool you can ever have. It tells you turn by turn that you're on track, you're going the right direction, you turn here, everything else. And when you know what you're doing, not a big deal. You flip that thing off, you don't need it any longer. But not many people go through HR system transitions very often over the life cycle of their business. Hopefully you've minimized that to just a few times. And the last one may have been 10 years ago. So that sales rep being in there, kind of being that nav system guiding you through and telling you, yep, you're okay. We're doing a payroll training on Tuesday. That's exactly what should be happening. After that, we're going to be setting up your time and labor system. Like, that's exactly what should be happening. Just that comfort that comes from that makes you feel a lot more confident and eliminates a lot of the brain waste that occurs when you don't feel good about what's going on and asking questions. And then the sales rep has to get involved anyway at that point in time, because they got to field phone calls at 6, 7 o'clock at night when that business owner's worried about tomorrow and are we on track?
Yeah, I'm imagining it's like the, then you get down to West Palm Beach after using that navigator the whole time, and everybody says, man, this guy's a great driver. He got us all the way down here with no issues and no wrong turns, and you get to thank the nav. So
That's right.
yeah, exactly. Well, I guess when we think about onboardings and the differences between how the different PEOs do it, and kind of what they can do to be a little better at it, it sounds like it's communication between onboarding teams and reps themselves. Obviously, PEOMG, we obviously help with that as well, because we're coming in with a common language that we can also educate the business owner on, so that they're speaking the same language as PEOs. They're not learning, all these new phrases and terms and everything right out of the gate. But I guess talk a little bit about PEOMG in those scenarios, and then how we make that a smoother transition.
Yeah, I mean, we show up at every meeting, every meeting, every internal meeting, every employee-facing meeting. We are there on site, or at minimum in the Zoom, if that's the best way to go about doing it. Mm-hmm. Being that translator of what's going on. I think about one here recently we did, and we were able to guide employees through helping them understand their healthcare plans and the options that exist out there. Another one recently, and this is kind of some of the translation that's absolutely needed. There were questions being asked about gathering the handbook and setting up a new policy, and this was in like the not in front of the employees onboarding steps. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't get a straight answer out of their HR specialist, because they were asking for a degree of guidance that person wasn't prepared to answer yet, because they hadn't reviewed the handbook. And we were able to step in and explain why they couldn't answer, because I could see our client getting frustrated. Like, well, why can't you just help me understand this? And this person's going, well, and kind of talking around it. And I finally jumped in. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't have to comply with their rules internally. This is why she can't answer, right? Because she hasn't reviewed the handbook and doesn't want to be liable for saying anything and giving you any bad advice. So, they're going to, when can you have this reviewed? The representative said, by Wednesday. Be like, perfect. So on Thursday, could we expect some feedback on our client's question? And the answer was absolutely. So that's an example where what could happen if we weren't in that room. The client starts getting frustrated and starts getting doubt in their mind. Like, did I buy the right solution? I'm asking for help and I'm not getting it. And the PEO, trying to do what's right from their standards and practices and a layer of bureaucracy that they've built, can't say, and is in a bad spot. And so now, issue alleviated. We could connect the dots on what's happening and why there's miscommunication, and then establish a plan for when they're going to get their answers that they actually wanted. And so those are just a couple quick examples of things that literally happen on every single process, which is why I think so much that the sales representation should be in those rooms, because the onboarding is the beginning of the relationship and all the positivity and impact that can come as a result of it. But let's not forget, it is also the moment where client attrition can also begin. And so that client that's getting frustrated and not feeling supported and not feeling the value that they just were told all about through this whole sales process, they're starting to feel firsthand, like, maybe I made a wrong decision. And even if you get past that, that is a nagging negative event that will imprint on that client and always cause them to question why was that so difficult, and what else isn't what they said it was going to be. And then you're just waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah. And when they come back with another question in the future, they can kind of see what the process to getting an answer looks like. And that can prevent them from wanting to ask.
Which, it's a great point. They didn't feel supported. It's kind of a bigger pain in the ass than it needs to be. So I'll just go ask somebody else. And then, 24 months down the road, that customer gets plucked by another PEO or just leaves you altogether. And you're like, well, you never really asked for, you never really engaged. We wanted to engage more, and be like, well, let's not forget the few times that I did, it was no treat. I didn't really enjoy it, and I didn't feel supported. So yeah, I became a very expensive payroll and benefits only client. And I kind of worked with somebody else for the HR stuff because every time it was a challenge with you.
And, or it ran up against that policy or bureaucratic process, and the answer was delayed and never really clear,
So we aim to solve that in the beginning because, one, we've vetted out a lot of that through the evaluation process. Like, that's not what that customer needs, and how that PEO does it is going to align very well. But during that onboarding process, we are that translator in the room, connecting these two lines of thought to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Gotcha. All right. So if there's a client going through an onboarding with a PEO, let's say they're on their own, they're not working with PEOMG, what are things they keep in their mind as they're going through it? What's kind of their approach, and how they can get through this onboarding as smoothly as possible?
One is ask a million questions and don't stop until you get all your answers, because it will linger. Something will come up you're not thinking about, and just be wildly inquisitive and ask questions over and over again, and don't apologize. Like, I hear clients say a lot of time, just out of kindness, they're like, we know we're a handful, we know this, but like, don't. You need this to go well. You need this to go well for you. You need this to go well for your employees. Like, your employees are looking at you around this decision. So ask as many questions as you want and don't apologize for it. Two, level set some expectations for yourself. Like, if you're an individual who goes like, we're going to have a zero defect payroll because PEO sales rep X told me so, you are smarter than that. There's going to be some bumps. And so don't allow yourself to be duped. Ask questions about it, and then hold that rep accountable to what they said. And then three, through the implementation process, just establish non-negotiable deadlines of when you need things done, because you have a business to run away from this transition. You've got other stuff. You've got employees, you've got clients, vendors, partners, what have you, you need to interact with. And you need to, when a PEO says they're going to get something done, like, get them to put that in writing. Say, we're going to have this time and attendance transition done by X. And by agreeing to X, I, as the client, recognize I got to get this and this and this done. But I don't want to get past this date for, getting our time and attendance system set up. Is that something we can agree on? So ask questions, level set your expectations around it, and hold people accountable.
That's great. Perfect. Well, I think this was a great one on onboarding, Ryan, and enjoy your time. And when are you coming back from West Palm Beach?
A couple days. Got a couple more days. Got some great meetings with, again, more partners and some prospective customers. And so yeah, and it's nice and warm down here. So if I can extend it as long as I possibly can, that'd be great. But no, I'll be back in a couple days.
Well, hopefully the clouds clear up. It looks like it's a little overcast in the background there.
Yeah, it is. That's all right. We had a podcast to record. I can be inside for that.
Well, next time you'll be back. We'll do this in the studio. And thank you again, everybody, for tuning into this episode of the PEO Speedwagon. We'll see you next time.